Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with I guess you'd call this, I don't know. This is a request. It's by request. Somebody asked me about the Jersey Devil, which I've talked about infrequently over the videos, and of course I'm writing the Pineys, which takes place in the Pine Barrens, where the Jersey Devil originates. And for those of you who don't know, I did the Jersey Devil comic book. We launched it back in, is it 96? Yeah, 96. God, 24 years ago. Um, I still have copies, which shows you how lucrative the comic book industry is. I really overprinted way too much. I have copies of every single issue for sale, mind you, except for issue 2, which we are currently sold out of. But let me go through the comics, and I can tell you a little bit about the legend. The comic itself, currently I have a reprint for, I believe we sell it for $1.75, but you can get, there are 12 issues in print. One is sold out, so you can get 11 issues. We sell them $1 a piece plus shipping. So if you'd like to get some, shoot me an email. But issue 1 through 4, and this was the original cover on 1 here. I don't know why, but the other cover's not coming up. Here it is here in black and white with a 1 over it. Excuse me. And the first 4 issues was a mystery who the guy is behind the mask, because he's kind of like a crazy guy who lives in the woods with a Jersey Devil mask, right? And he sees the ghost of anyone who's ever died in the Jersey Pine Barrens. It's one of the legends in the Pine Barrens that it's cursed. It's cursed land. And you can see here's the issue 4. And this gives away the ending of the first story arc. Now, the legend stuff that's in this comic, because again, it's sort of like a anti sort of superhero guy that we build the legend around. So sometimes he's telling the legend, sometimes he's hearing the legend, or sometimes he's living it, kind of thing. So we do, the thing about the cursed land and the headless ghost pirate. Legend has it that Billy the Kid buried his treasure in the South Jersey Pine Barrens. Billy the Kid. Did I say Billy the Kid? Captain Kidd. Excuse me. Got that all screwed up. Captain Kidd, the notorious privateer, buried his treasure in the Jersey Pinelands, intending to come back for it, and beheaded one of his men so the ghost would guard the treasure. And so supposedly the headless ghost pirate is walking around South Jersey. So he's one of the characters in the first story. He is JD, we call him JD, his sidekick, and he is integral to the first story. And he's not really a good guy. Let's put it to you that way. Then in issue 5 and 6, we did a story called The Robin Hood of the Pines, and it is about Joe Mulliner and the refugees. These were guys who lived during the Revolutionary War, and they lived in the Pine Barrens, and they robbed from the rich, but they kept it for themselves because they were robbing people under the pretense of still fighting for the British, which I guess would have been technically true had the British won the Revolutionary War. Everybody was up north in North Jersey fighting the war, and in South Jersey, most of the towns were defenseless, save for a few guys who were pretty young and a few guys who were pretty old, too old or too young to fight the war. They were left to sort of guard the towns, but Joe's men were more capable than that. So this definitely ties into Piney lore, not so much the Jersey Devil lore, in that the Jersey Devil was as a legend, still kind of known at that time. It really started around 1735. So we, in the comic, kind of used the legend as a backdrop in these two issues, because again, you could see the ghost, and then JD meets the ghost, and then he has to go out on one last mission for the ghost. Then in issue 7, we did the Great American Shootout, which was really about how people perceive myths, legends, and folklore. So it was about a town in the not too distant future that's very nice, and they had romanticized the drug dealers of, say, 40, 50 years ago. And an old man remembers how it really was, and then he tells the story, and it's about JD coming into town like a gunfighter and cleaning up the drugs, along with this local cop. In issue 8, we did a story called Critters, which takes place in the Blue Hole of Winslow Township, and it's a real place. I did a little piece on it for Weird New Jersey. It's a bottomless pit, supposedly filled with crystal clear water that's cold, even in the summer, and supposedly the Jersey Devil lived there. So what we did in the comic is that a meteor formed the lake millions of years ago, and it's actually full of these critters, these little worms that burrow into you and take you over and cause all sorts of havoc, but they go dormant in the cold water. So they end up coming back, and all kinds of things happen. And we tied it into a famous the famous Pinelands doctor. What the heck was his name? Oh man, I should have looked it up. I can't think of his name. He's a famous guy in the late 1800s. He was African American, and he learned to become a doctor. I can't think of his damn name. But his ghost makes a brief appearance and helps JD figure out how to defeat the worms, at least enough to get past it, sort of thing. And so that was we started doing self-contained issues starting in issue 7. But the Blue Hole was definitely a part of the Jersey Devil lore. Then in issue 9, the future's not what it used to be. We did the story. It takes place in the not too distant future, well, actually far future, after the world's sort of destroyed, and it takes place in Smithville, which is right next to Leeds Point, where the Jersey Devil was born. And then it's implied that the Jersey Devil is reborn in the form of Juan 3. And Juan 3 stands for 1-3, which is tattooed to his body. And he is a genetic construct of this giant supercomputer called the DM, the Dream Machine. Stands for Dream Machine. And the Dream Machine was originally designed before the war destroyed everything. It was designed to build genetically engineer pets for people, and so they build you cute little puppies with wings and stuff like that. Well, eventually the DM had to build servants for itself in order to continue growing its customer base. And by this point, most of New Jersey is underwater, and it's a post-apocalyptic wasteland. And Juan 3, 13, he's the 13th genetically engineered pet to work for him, the DM. And the DM gives him, or he finds, Gun. And Gun is a sentient gun with a computer in it, and talks to Juan, and he runs around and he bullies the local populace. He doesn't quite understand what he's doing, but eventually Juan meets a guy who was Sev End, and Seven was the 7th genetically engineered pet, and he eventually broke free of the Dream Machine and built an empire, but eventually lost it all because he got old and he couldn't bully people anymore. So he tells Juan, you've got to make friends, you've got to change your ways. And at first Juan doesn't believe him and he kills him. But then later he decides, okay, yeah, maybe he was right, I'm going to have to make friends. How do I do that? So the only person he can ask is the Gun. And the Gun is a military sort of computer, so he doesn't really understand the question. But the Gun tells him, well, he has to gather intelligence. So he goes to the only place left in the area that has, you know, intelligence. In other words, printed matter to read and learn things. And it just happens to be an old comic book store that's still, you know, still around, even though nobody's buying comic books. It's just, you know, all the comics sitting in this building. So Juan breaks in and starts reading the comics, and he comes across, of course, the Jersey Devil comic. And he sees a guy with horns and, you know, skulking around fighting crime. So he decides he'll be like the guy he reads in the comic. So he adopts the persona of the comic book character. So it's like a very meta idea, right? It's a comic in a comic in a comic. And then Juan goes out and tries to make friends, but it's just a total disaster, and it goes on from there. I really liked, that was a particularly fun comic to write because it wasn't, most of the Jersey Devils are kind of dark and dreary. This one was more comedic. Then in issue 10, we really got into the actual legend of the Jersey Devil, and this is a true story. This is called the Flimflam Man, and it's about Norman Jeffries, and he was a real guy who lived back in the early 1900s. And what he did was he read about the Jersey Devil legend and decided to exploit it, and he ran the Dime Street Museum on 9th Street in Philadelphia. So he had one of his cronies mail a letter to the local newspaper saying, oh, you know, I'm just a simple farmer's wife, and my poor husband was accosted by this creature called the Jersey Devil, and it was terrible. Well, the newspapers picked it up, and it became a big news story. It was like a slow news day. And this actually happened, but we do it in the comic as well. So what Norman did was he allowed, well, he didn't allow it. He just kind of, the story sort of blossomed out of control. People started seeing it everywhere. It was kind of like a moral panic. Like one of the things that happened, and this is totally true, there were people who were robbing houses, or at least one guy, and this is 1909 when this takes place. So when he was robbing the houses, to case them out, he would sneak around. But it was wintertime, and there was snow on the ground, so he didn't want to leave footprints. So what he did was he took boards and hammered horseshoes on them. So when he walked around in the snow, because he put them on his feet, and he walked around in the snow, he'd just leave horseshoe tracks, right? And he didn't think anything of that. Well, the thing was, everybody was all geared up because they had read in the newspaper about the Jersey Devil. So they were looking at the footprints. And when they saw the footprints of a 2-footed hooven creature, they said, oh my God, that's the Jersey Devil. He was looking into my window. So there became more and more evidence. And so people started forming vigilante mobs and running around looking for the Jersey Devil. People on a trolley claimed to have seen it. It flew up into the wires and exploded. A police chief in Camden, New Jersey, claimed to have seen it and shot at it. I mean, it was spiraling out of control. People were seeing it everywhere. And Norman was worried that it would eventually get back to him. So he decided to stage a capture of the Jersey Devil. So he sent one of his cronies to rent a kangaroo, and they tied antlers to it, and the kangaroo licked off, they painted it green, and the kangaroo licked off all the paint, nearly died. But then they got some different kind of paint and tied the antlers back and staged this capture in the park, and then took a picture. And then they announced that the Jersey Devil would be on display at the 9th Street Museum, and that was the whole point of the exercise, the 9th Street Dime Museum, as it was called, because it was a dime to get in. And so they had the kangaroo in a cage, but it had started to go crazy from eating all the paint. And then they had a kid, and this is horrible, but this is true. They had a kid stand behind a curtain, right? And there was a curtain in front of the stage, and then the cage, and then another curtain behind it. The kid was behind the second curtain, and he had a board with a nail in it. And what they would do is the kid would whack the kangaroo with the nail, and then it would go berserk, and they would open the front curtain to the audience, and the kangaroo would be like, ah, and the audience would go, oh my God, and then they would shut the curtain and go, okay, next show. And they tried to save the Dime Museum with that act. It didn't work. It ended up closing anyway, but I think it's more the result of different entertainment. I mean, maybe people really weren't, the Dime Museum was kind of on its way out anyway. he was also involved in another scam where he had he bought a a deformed man, basically, a guy who was really really small, and but he was also, mentally he wasn't there, but he took care of him, and then he staged a thing where he hired an actress to pretend to be an heiress and fall in love with him, and then they got married. So that was another whole thing that Norman Jeffries did. But that's what this whole issue is about, and most of it's true, which is the ironic thing about it, because it's called the Flimflam Man, and so it plays with the idea of sort of lying and sort of boasting. But ironically, a lot of the comic is totally true, but it's about a guy who kind of lied a lot. But again, it's another fun issue. And then issues 11 and 12, we got into some really deep Jersey folklore. It's called Who the Hell is Amazing Jerry? And then issue 12, that's supposed to be White Stag Rising. I don't know why it says White Stage. That's my own typo. But Amazing Jerry is another character from the Pines. He's Jerry Mono. He is a wizard in South Jersey, and he had weird powers, like he was able to take off his own head and give himself a haircut. He had 2 enchanted axes that could cut wood, and he had other warlock powers. And then there was another character named Peg, who we call her Peg Misery in the comic, and she's a witch, and she could transform herself into a bunny and a lizard, and in the comic she's like super powerful. So her and Jerry are like a team of evildoers, and there's also this book which we also used in the Pineys, called the Wallam Olam, which was supposedly this legendary book written by Native Americans who didn't have a written language, and it was supposed to chronicle their journey from over the Siberian Peninsula and through North America to New Jersey. And we used it in this case as some sort of magical spell book, and that's exactly what we use it in the Pineys for. But the premise of Jerry in the comic is there were these entities who lived in the Jersey Pine Barrens because they were cursed, and the shamans of that time communed with them, and they could see the future. But the future frightened everybody, and the entities tried to explain to them what was going to happen. The Europeans were going to come, and there was going to be all sorts of strife and terribleness, and they tried to warn them, but everybody just went crazy who they tried to warn. They didn't understand the visions, and eventually they became angry and bitter, and they sort of become evil, and they try to kill everybody. So the shamans summon the Jersey Devil. They summon a devil from the depths of hell to fight these creatures, and it works, except then the devil just runs amok, and he pillages and rapes and does all sorts of horrible things until finally the shamans get together and send him back to hell. But he keeps coming back, and eventually they cut a deal with the devil, so to speak. If he will solve their problem with these entities, these sort of cursed entities, then and the devil agrees to do that on the condition that he can come back every 100 years. So the entities, the devil then banishes the entities and Jerry, who is possessed by them, which gives him his powers, and Peg, and he bans them from New Jersey. And it goes, the implication is that Jerry is the headless horseman, like he can't cross the bridge into New Jersey because he's physically incapable because of the magic or whatever. And so the New Jersey is saved, and the Lenni Lenape are saved, but every 100 years they have to deal with the devil coming back. And of course, eventually the devil comes back, and then nobody knows how to send it back because all the Lenni Lenape are gone, and that's where you get the Jersey Devil. So that's sort of the creepiness of the comic. Now, how does this all tie into the real quote-unquote Jersey Devil? Well, there is no real Jersey Devil. There are many, 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 many different variations of the Jersey Devil legend, and I have few like a dozen different ones here on the site if you want to see them. But there are different versions where Mother Leeds is the 13th child of the 13th child, or the 6th of the 6th of the 6th, or something like that. That some say her name wasn't Mother Leeds, it was Mrs. Shrouds. Some say it was Leeds Point. Some say it was a different town in South Jersey. Some say it was the seventh son of the seventh day. Another one was that it's not the Jersey Devil, it's the Leeds Devil. Oh, the other town was Esteville, New Jersey, in Gloucester County, and then it flew into the swamps of Leeds Point. Sometimes he was born in Burlington County. Sometimes he was born in Pleasantville, New Jersey, at the 500 block of South Main Street, to get that specific. So, you don't know, because these stories are handed down at a time when people didn't really write this down. They didn't have cell phones or anything to record this. So, if you had somebody write it down, maybe it would survive. But people were very superstitious at this time. You didn't just write down a bunch of stuff about a devil that could get you into a lot of trouble in the late 1600s, early 1700s, if you know what I mean. So, it wasn't until, the 1900s, really, when Norman Jeffries came around in 1909, he really set the pace for the modern telling of the Jersey Devil. And because of that 1909 incident, the Jersey Devil became as big as it is. But prior to that, it was just this sort of very low-key thing. And in the modern day, it's been, turned into stories. It's been an X-Files episode, The New Adventures of Johnny Quest, all kinds of different places and TV shows, and the Jersey Devil was born along the Mullica River to a Jane Leeds Johnson. I mean, there's all kinds of different ones here. So, I mean, you can check it out on my page. I haven't updated it in a while, but still has some cool stuff. And, it's just, a neat monster sort of legend. It's something very akin to New Jersey. It's New Jersey's official state demon, by the way. We're the only state with a state demon. And it's what the hockey team is named after. There was a lot of talk of moving the hockey team to Nashville, and people were like, what? You can't be the Nashville Jersey Devils. It's the Jersey Devils, damn it. So, yeah, that's what the Jersey Devil's all about. If you have any further questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. And, it's always a fun time here in South Jersey because of the Jersey Devil. I mean, we have everything. We have Jersey Devil mini golf, and we have, Jersey Devil drinks and wines. And if you go down to Leeds Point, well, you really go to Smithville. That's where the tourist trap is. There'll be all sorts of Jersey Devil T-shirts and memorabilia. I got a bunch of it. And I used to sell my comic down there. And, so it's... And you see, when you're a kid, you used to see the Jersey Devil story in grammar school. It would be something they teach you. It'd be this crazy thing. You'd see it one day and go, what the heck? If you were in Boy Scouts around here, they would take you in the woods and say, oh, look here, see these marks on the tree? That's a Jersey Devil. Watch out. And then they'd shut off the flashlights and leave you in the dark. Stuff like that. So it was the local scary story around here. And every once in a while, somebody names something after the Jersey Devil. And every once in a while, somebody tries to make a movie about the Jersey Devil. It never quite works out. They say there's a curse on anybody who tries to make a movie about the Jersey Devil. It never seems to work out for one reason or another. But if you want to hear more about the Jersey Devil, check out my comics. And check out the Pineys over at Amazon.com. Thank you, and happy Halloween.